The Germans taunted the Americans trapped in Bastogne, and then General Patton said, "Play, we'll take a closer look at what happened, who's to blame, and what it all led to." Support the channel by subscribing, leave your thoughts in the comments, and share this video. The topic is far too serious to stay silent. The Americans found themselves in Bastogne in the very midst of winter chaos when the icy wind cut through to the bone, and German forces, confident in their victory, mocked the fragile siege. It seemed the whole world had turned against them as the Germans discussed how easily they could crush a few American battalions trapped in the narrow streets of the town. Bastogne became a symbol of desperation, and the American soldiers heard the taunts and the rumble of enemy mechanized units approaching almost without resistance. But it was here, in this small Belgian town, that a legend was born that would shake the hearts of anyone who would hear it, because the actions of ordinary people exceeded the boldest expectations. Let's break down how it all began. December of 1944. The Germans launched a massive offensive aimed at disrupting the Allied positions in the Ardennes. The American troops in Bastogne were exhausted from previous battles. Supplies were limited, and the cold and snow turned every operation into a feat of endurance. Hope seemed almost gone, but General George Patton, a man who could turn the impossible into achievable, made an unexpected move. His words reached everyone at the front. "Play this game while we approach. You will hold." That phrase became a spark that ignited determination. Patton's staff was already preparing a plan for a lightning counterattack, but for the soldiers surrounded by the enemy, the only option was to stand firm. Fact: 8,000 Americans found themselves encircled by enemy forces several times their number. Why is this important? Because true courage is born in such situations, and it is here that leaders capable of changing the course of the war are revealed. The Americans understood that retreat was impossible, that every house, every street would become their last stand. And what does this change? It creates tension, making the viewers' hearts tremble with anticipation, because every shot, every explosion could be fatal. The enemies mocked them, but in that laughter lay their mistake. They underestimated the resolve and courage of their opponents. The most famous phrase of this battle belongs to the commander of the 101st Division, Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe. When he was informed of the German ultimatum regarding surrender, he initially thought the Germans were planning to surrender to him. Upon clarification that the Germans demanded the American surrender, he laughed and replied, "Nuts to that." These words instantly boosted morale and became a symbol of the Americans' unwavering determination in Bastogne. The next part shows how the Americans began organizing their defense. Soldiers fortified buildings, using every available resource, from artillery shells to empty supply crates. Every minute counted, every move was calculated. One of the battalions, known as the 50th Infantry Division, transformed ruined houses into impregnable strongholds, holding back the German onslaught. Fact: by the end of the first day, they repelled 5 attacks despite the enemy's superiority. Why is this important? Because such episodes demonstrate that strategy and courage can change the outcome, even when the situation seems hopeless. What does this change? Every viewer feels pride for the soldiers, seeing the strength of spirit that surpassed numbers and weapons. By the end of this block, the suspense: how many more assaults can these people withstand, and what is Patton planning to rescue Bastogne? The story would not be complete without General Patton's intervention. His maneuver became decisive. He concentrated tank units, directing them toward Bastogne from the east and south, while simultaneously arranging aerial resupply. Fact: the first tanks reached the city outskirts 3 days after the defense was fully established. Why is this important? Because the actions of one person can change the fate of thousands. Americans, hearing the roar of engines, felt hope returning. What does this change? The tension that had been building for several days begins to transform into determination, then into confidence that the encirclement could be broken. Mini cliffhanger: what will happen when the tanks join the garrison inside? The next block focuses on the psychological aspect. The Germans, observing the Americans' tenacity, began losing confidence. Their mockery faded, replaced by anxiety and doubt. Fact: commanders of German units noted that the morale of their troops fell after each repelled assault. Why is this important? Because morale, not just weapons, determines the outcome of battles. What does this change? The viewer senses the emotional dynamic, sees the reversal of the situation. Those who seemed defeated are now in control. By the end of this block, anticipation builds for the final confrontation when Patton's forces fully link up with the besieged troops. The climax arrives. American units, breaking through snowdrifts and minefields, enter Bastogne. Fact, by the fifth day, the counterattack had completely shattered the encirclement, and German forces began to retreat. Why is this important? Because this is not just a victory, it is a symbol that determination and strategy can overcome numerical superiority. What does this change? For the viewer, it is an emotional explosion, a moment of pride for the soldiers, for the country, for everyone who stood in defense of freedom. Mini cliffhanger. What awaits the Germans now that Bastogne is free? In the final block, the results are summed up. The Americans proved that even in the harshest conditions, courage, discipline, and teamwork can turn the tide of war. Fact, after the city was liberated, generals noted that this became a turning point for the entire Allied offensive in the Ardennes. Why is this important? Because one decisive operation can change the strategic picture of a war. What does this change? The viewer understands the value of each soldier's sacrifice and effort, feeling pride and respect for history, for the courage of fellow citizens. The finale leaves a powerful emotional impact. Bastogne became a symbol of bravery and defiance. American soldiers, despite the cold, hunger, and mortal danger, proved that the impossible was possible. For the whole world, it serves as a reminder that in the harshest trials, people can unite, support each other, and perform feats that will be remembered for centuries. Share in the comments which moments of this story struck you the most. Which decisions and actions of the soldiers inspire admiration, and what lessons can be drawn from this epic confrontation? This story demonstrates that courage and strategy, resolve and unity can turn any chaos into victory, and that legends are forged where faith and action go hand in hand, with each soldier becoming a hero, making hearts tremble with pride for their country.